Hi, Jason Blanchard here, Jason's Trucking Info, and today my co-driver Aaron Mays, it's his turn to ask me a question. He's going to interview me. He's going to ask me a lot of the same questions I asked him and maybe a few more, and he's going to interview me about how I got into the trucking industry and all kinds of things related to trucking. So go for it.
You ready? All right, partner. Let's do it. Well, first question is, what year did you get your CDLs, and what school did you start with?
I went out to CR England's trucking school, and those of you in the trucking world know CR England, and I went out to Salt Lake City and in 2000, and I graduated from their school in February of 2000 sometime.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I heard they were a good school and not that expensive whenever they're sponsoring students, so
yeah,
that's pretty good. All right, next question is, sir, what trailers have you dealt with through your experience of truck driving?
Mostly dry van. When I was at CR England was really the only reefers I ever did, and I wasn't there very long. I was there not very long, so mostly dry van. And then recently I had about 8 months of experience with hauling tanker loads of liquid egg, food grade product. I did that for about 7-8 months, and then I did some short runs through a temp agency hauling flatbed a few different times out of I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Labor Ready, but I did some short runs just from like Des Moines over to like I can't remember the name of the towns, but just like an hour or two, like maybe 3 hours at the most. So that's pretty much what I've done. And then I've done some did a little bit of straight truck with, and had some trucks with lift gates, and I've unloaded my own trailers with different types of electric pallet jacks or forklifts. So I've done a little bit of that.
So a lot of couple muscle work in there, and then you got a couple that you didn't have to touch freight, so that's pretty good. Yeah. My other question is, when you went into the trucking industry, please explain, well, do you mind explaining how the medical card works for new experienced drivers, and basically what to expect, what to do when trying to get your medical card in the trucking industry? Just to give them a short example of how did you get your medical card in an easy and faster way?
I learned very quickly when I went off to CR England that it's a process getting your DOT medical card. They check you for all possible medical conditions, and they test your eyesight. You got to have at least 20/30 vision, last I knew. And they test you for signs of diabetes in your urine and drugs and all kinds of things. They'll test you for all kinds of medical things. And so in order to do it real easily, you got to really be checking up with your own doctor and making sure that you got your health in check. And then if you have any things like that, if you have to be taking medications, that you're taking those, especially when you're going to go in to take your DOT medical, because you either get, if you have any medical things, they usually give you a medical card for a year. If you have if you're taking medications to correct high blood pressure or diabetes or anything else, they'll usually only give you a 1-year medical card. If you can get off of those, I was recently able to lose a bunch of weight through the ketogenic diet, and I was able to get off my medications, even though I wasn't taking them anyway. And now this year when I came back to Allen Ritchie, I was able to get a 2-year medical card because I'm off all my medications. So
okay, yeah, that's basically a faster way. Yeah, just make sure that you're checked up and you could get your medical card pretty quick. So All right, next question, sir. What made you want to be a truck driver?
I always thought that being a truck driver was a cool thing, but I always kind of had this perception of the trucking world that it was a lot more technical than what it was, and that there was a lot of things that you had to know that technically you don't. It's best if you know those things. Like, I basically thought that a truck driver kind of had to be their own diesel mechanic, and it's helpful if you do have that knowledge and experience, but most of the truck drivers don't know much of anything about how to do anything on the truck. They can barely figure out how to change a light bulb or anything else. So I had this much, I thought it was going to be a lot more in depth than what it really was, and you get to learn that very quick. It is a very fast-paced process getting into the trucking world usually.
What was your perspective on it before going in the trucking industry?
Basically what I just said, that it was I thought it was going to be really hard. There's going to be a lot of real technical stuff to learn and stuff, and there was some stuff, but basically it's just learning the stuff to manage the manipulation of the truck, driving and backing and shifting, and paying attention to where your trailer's at and where your truck's at, and how to become more comfortable behind the wheel so you can be a more confident and competent driver. So,
gotcha. Was there any struggles going through your process of learning how to drive the semi-truck?
When I first arrived to truck driving school in Terry, England, I could barely straight line back. I had trouble figuring out shifting. Basically, I struggled with most of it, but I got out there. I was out there on that backing range and shifting range and whatever, and trying to practice everything as much as possible, because I was determined. I had made the decision before I even left that this was something I wanted to do, and it was going to be the first thing that I ever did, pretty much, where I was getting miles and miles away from family and my own parents, where I didn't have them there to bail me out, to be like, oh, you know, we're going to help you do this and blah blah blah, which they wouldn't really be able to help me with that anyway. But still, is basically the true feeling of feeling like I was out on my own, and I was truly my own man. I was truly out on my own, being a grown-up, and truly it's all up to me to get through it. So I really felt like it was important, and I really took it upon myself to make sure. When I was in high school, I was a poor student. I didn't hardly ever do my homework. I didn't hardly ever do anything. I was in special ed through most of my schooling, all the way up through high school. I was stuck in a room and I barely did my work. I didn't really even try, really, most of the time. I was basically a lazy student. So,
damn, man, I didn't know that.
Sorry. So, and they thought I had some sort of learning disability. I just think I was lazy.
So making this, so basically making this accomplishment was like the greatest thing that you.
Up to that point, it was one of my greatest accomplishments.
Because you're proud of yourself, you know, going through a lot of struggles at an early stage, and when you're young, you know, and then you get to this point, you got like a career job that makes more money than anything, yeah, a lot of things. So yeah.
I was working at a meat packing plant when I quit that to go out to truck driving school. I didn't have any family, like I didn't have like a wife or kids. I think I was like 23 years old.
You were young, working.
I was like 5 years out of high school when I did that. I had a few jobs, but I had gotten fired because of attendance. I had a real bad attendance record and stuff like that. I mean, I was terrible. I was very irresponsible.
And that's what happens when you work at a job. See, that's what happens when you just settle for a job and not get a career. And this is a transformation, as you can see. My good man got a career now.
Now this is 18, 19 years later.
Yeah, see, that CDLs pays off. All right, well, another question. What was your struggles as far as skills wise in the semi truck? What was your mainly hardest struggle? Like, was it shifting? Was it backing? Was it pre-tripping?
In school, it was mainly shifting and getting the verbatim down for the stupid pre-trip examination that you only learn that once. You learn that to pass your CDL. Once you pass your CDL, unless you go back to school again, which I did, I went as a refresher course, and I had to do that stupid pre-trip thing again just for the refresher course, even though I already had my CDL.
Yeah.
It was kind of redonkulous that I had to do it again, but I think I had to do it again.
Well, you know how the schools and regulations are. Even if you've been driving for 20 years, if you got to do the refresher, they'll be like, well, we don't care. We want you to do it again, So,
yeah.
But how was that? How was that going through that again, though?
I knew what to expect and stuff. The only problem was when we were going out doing night driving as a group and we'd break up with different instructors.
Right.
There was a couple, to be nice about it, there were a couple of the instructors were very nitpicky and made me nervous. And even as an experienced driver, I basically got so nervous behind the wheel because of the guy was nitpicking and basically sitting there staring at you behind the wheel and watching everything you do, and nitpicking is just like, I knew how to drive, but he basically made me so nervous I couldn't remember how to shift a truck, and I was at that point used to floating. I used to practice all the time double clutching and floating so I could be fluent in both skills, and do them well. So if I ever had to double clutch for a DOT officer or whatever, that I would have that down good enough so I could do that, because they expect you to double clutch in school or for the stupid DOT officers.
Right.
But when you get out there after a few years, pretty much everybody eventually just goes to floating because it's easier and simpler, and most of the time you can float the gears and be easier on the truck than double clutching. But if you can master both, I suggest that it is a good idea.
Next question. What do you prefer and what do you suggest for new drivers out there as far as solo driving and team driving?
I suggest going team early on.
Okay.
And getting that experience. You have a backup there and you can both teach each other stuff. After a while, then go solo.
Okay.
I made the mistake of trying to go solo when I was first out with my driver trainer.
Is, what is your biggest strength and what is your biggest weakness when stepping into the semi truck?
When I gotta route myself to new places, sometimes I struggle. I get confused by signs and stuff and trying to figure out appropriate truck routes, appropriate places to take the truck. I've gotten better and learned the signs and stuff, but a lot of times there's a lot of unknowns when trying to route yourself. That's probably my biggest problems, and that's how I've usually gotten into most of the problems I've ever had. Not all of them, but a lot of the first, when I first got out as a truck driver, was the first how I got into issues, was trying to route myself and follow directions. And sometimes that was because the directions were crap to start with, and I was being given directions to the wrong place, and then I was already late and I was trying to find the right, one of my accidents that I had was a result of being in a rush because I got to the wrong part of the company I was going to. They had a beverage department, then they had a cold storage facility, and they were like so many blocks away from each other. And I parked in front of the beverage place. I was supposed to go to the cold storage place to drop off. Well, I had like a couple hours to sleep before this place was going to open up at like 7 a.m. Local time. And I woke up about 7:30 and my delivery time was 7 o'clock. Well, I was already at the wrong place, woke up a half hour late, got up and went in, and I was at the wrong place. I didn't know, I just knew that they had the right company name and that was the directions I had. So they gave me the wrong directions to the place on the Qualcomm, which is one of the reasons why you want to call and confirm directions with whenever you go places. You want to call and confirm directions always. But some places like CRST won't give you the numbers to the companies you're going to. The only numbers you have available to you are brokers, and that don't help you, because a broker might be in California and you might be delivering to Texas or something, or somewhere out east in Pennsylvania, and they're working off of phone and computer completely the other end of the country.
Yeah, so communication could definitely be disrupted between them and the driver.
So that is definitely one of my biggest struggles. My biggest strengths are backing and pushing it, getting there and trying to get there. I can get from one city to the next, no problem. I mean, I can route myself from cross country perfectly, but it's getting into the city and routing myself to the shippers and receivers or what have you, and finding places and dealing with stupid side roads and stuff. And I think all truckers struggle with that, but I don't know if I struggle more or less than other people.
Yep, I feel you. Next question is, what is your favorite truck?
Freightliners.
Okay. Yeah.
Volvos might be my second in line until they start having problems. As long as they're operating right, Volvos are, to me, a little bit more luxurious, but the Freightliner Cascadias are quite nice as well. It just kind of depends, but I don't really like the Kenworths and Peterbilts as much. I don't like that narrow front cab style where the seats up front and the windshield up front and everything's so compact that you can barely get between the seats to get into the back sleeper berth. I like that full cab up front as well, because I like that more space, and I don't know, I just don't prefer, because one thing it does is it makes it harder to use your mirrors, and then when you go to, anytime you ever go places where there's trucks trying to do backing, a lot of those guys got to either open up their door and look out, or they got to do whatever, because they got to adjust the mirrors and play with the mirrors just to back up, because they can't see. As soon as I start backing up, all they see is trailer. They can't hardly see anything. They're blind. Even on their sighted side, even on their driver's side, they're completely blind. They can't see anything. And their other mirrors on the hood are so distorted that they don't not much help. So I don't like those trucks mainly because of that. So and that's why I haven't had much experience with other trucks. There's so many different other trucks out there that we could
discuss about. Yeah.
But those are primarily the ones I've driven. I've driven mostly Freightliners in my career. I recently drove some automatics. I've always driven mostly 10 speeds. Okay. The Volvos at CRST that I drove were 8 speeds. Okay. And so when I was here, I haven't noticed me having a problem with it here this past year, but it seemed like I used to always try to skip the last 2 low gears and go into high gear, because I was so used to 8 speed. For some reason I just couldn't get my habit of shifting 2 more gears before I went up to high gear. Yeah. So I'd always be trying to skip those last 2 gears in the 10 speed Freightliners or whatever. And I haven't really noticed myself having that problem here lately, but I used to have that bad habit when I first came here because of the Volvos at CRST.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you got a couple guys that do skip a lot, and I usually call those guys skippers. So
if you know what you're doing, you can skip gears and do all kinds of stuff, as long as you know how to recover and know how to check things out.
Yeah, that's the main key, recovery. If you know how to recover,
you can screw up all you want, and and whatever.
Right. All right. Next question is, partner. All right. Let's just say you're meeting a new student, or a person, or just a random guy that's working at some job. He hates his job, but he wants to get into the trucking industry. what information will you tell him to get into the trucking industry, or how to get in the trucking industry? What is the first path to get him started?
I'd tell him to first get his health checked out and make sure he has health in control, like I said in the beginning of this video. You got to make sure your health is in check, make sure you get make sure that your eyes are being corrected properly. A lot of people, like I did, I first got my first pair of glasses back in middle school, but they were awkward and they didn't sit on my face right, so I never wore them. And so I didn't wear glasses until they forced me to get glasses to be a truck driver. I've been wearing glasses ever since. Now I feel naked without my glasses on. As soon as I wake up, my glasses are on. I wear them whenever I'm awake. The only time I take my glasses off is when I'm asleep, pretty much. And
after that process, what's the next process once they find out that their health is okay?
Then you got to ask your question: are you really ready to sit behind the wheel of a big vehicle in all kinds of weather, drive for 10 plus hours a day, and 70 hours a week, playing the waiting game a lot, dealing with stupid drivers all day, having to deal with road rage, and all kinds of drivers, even other supposedly professional truck drivers that can't keep themselves, in their own lane, and all kinds of bad habits. And decide whether you're ready not to be home, whether to be stuck on a truck for 4 to 6 weeks, usually at a time, if not longer, depending on your situation. And then most of these companies, when you first get out, will, unless you're really lucky and you find you find a company that is different, most of the time when you first get your CDL, you got to get at least 2 years experience before you get taken seriously as a driver. And you got to get 2 years experience. Losing track of thought, but you have 2 years experience. And then the other thing is you got to look at where you want to go to truck driving school at, whether or not you're willing to go across country to a school and everything like that. There's tons of trucking companies with their own internal school or attached to a local community college of some sort, or some sort of business that runs their own standalone truck driving school that might have a 5, 6 week or 8 week course. And trucking schools have a cost to them, and they can cost anywhere from, I don't even know what the costs are, but it can be expensive. I've heard even up as high as 12,000 depending, but I don't think most of them are that high. I think they're like half that, but I don't know because I didn't go that route. I went to a truck driving company, CR England, that runs their own school, and you sign a 2-year contract, and after that time, if you give them 2 years, which I didn't last that long, you're free and clear of that debt. Once you put in your 2 years, you get signed up with a bank, which they have their own bank actually set up at their terminal, their home terminal there at CR England. At least they used to, and they'd had the people from that bank come in and sign loans, and they didn't even check your credit or anything. They just automatically accepted you as a student there. At least they did back then. I don't know what they're doing now.
Well, they still sponsor students, so they're doing the same thing you're saying.
And they'd automatically set you up. But if you don't last, or if you quit or get let go before that time, then whatever's left on that loan, however much it is you got to pay that back. And I was fortunate that my grandpa helped me, because I didn't last that long. I had a couple accidents and a bunch of things going on, and just was struggling out on my own, because a lot of things I wasn't trained as well as I could have been on, and just a lot of different things.
But don't get it wrong, that cost that you have to pay back the CDLs is definitely worth it.
Yeah,
because you'll be making a lot more.
I made it out of CR England with my Class A CDL, and so that was, you know, at least I could walk out there and say I have my CDL. Well, the thing is, I was in a predicament. What if you make it out of truck driving school, but you have no experience, like I was? You wind up kind of being in limbo. Yeah, you have your Class A CDL, but you have no years of experience, and so no one really wants to hire you. So you've got to get some years of experience. It's hard to find a place to hire you. You can go through temp agencies, and they'll put you to work, and you can make. But back then, and you know, those first couple years after, it was like $10.50 an hour, and that was pretty good money back then, sort of. But you can make that same amount of money at a warehouse somewhere and stuff like that. So it's kind of like whatever. But after a while, you get some years of experience under your belt, and I basically had to fight my way back into truck driving by going to CRST as a refresher. I brought my girlfriend as a newbie, and we went to truck driving school at CRST in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which was nice that I was only like 2 hours away from Des Moines, because that's when I had problems with some health problems started springing up. I was dropping sugar in my urine, and they sent me back, and I was dangerously close to being diabetic.
That's why you always gotta make sure you're healthy before you take that exam. Yeah. Always make sure.
And I had gone, I did exactly what I just suggested to you guys. I went to my doctor before I went out there, and I still had problems and still got sent home and had to take care of things. And then my girlfriend, they wanted her to get tested for sleep apnea because she had a larger neck. She was kind of built a little bigger, like a linebacker. She had a bigger frame, and so they they wanted her to go get tested for sleep apnea and stuff like that. And so one thing I suggest, when you're in a DOT medical examination, try to avoid answering questions about snoring. Don't say that you snore. If you have any health problems, you want to take it up with your doctor. You do not want to be very truthful with the DOT medical examiner unless you know that they're going to figure it out anyway. Then you got to be truthful. It's kind of like if you know that, you know, it's kind of like with the police. If you know that they're not going to find it, don't admit to anything if you don't know that they can't find it out.
They don't know. They don't tell.
So anyway.
All right. 2 more questions here. My next question is, when a beginner driver starts out, explain to them what pay they're going to be experiencing, and how can they experience and build up to get more pay on their belt.
Well, when you first graduate, when you first pass to get your CDL, and you get sent off with your driver trainer who's going to teach you everything on the road. He's supposed to be teaching you, he or she is supposed to be teaching you the realities of being out there. Some of the stuff they teach you in trucking school is not so realistic. And when you get out there on the road with your driver trainer, hopefully they're going to teach you the realities. But the pay that you're going to receive when you're out those few weeks, you get paid like an exact amount of like $200, maybe $350. I don't know what it is anymore. I'm sure they brought it up slightly, but I don't think much. You get a weekly paycheck during those 4 weeks or so that you're with your trainer. Once you get graduated, you're going to get paid whatever that cents per mile is that you're going to start out with, and it's, I think it's like 30 some,
35,
yeah,
like that.
And like a lot of companies pay like 40 some cents after you get some experience and you get time in. It builds up, and that you get raises over time. And sometimes a lot of truck drivers job hop. They'll take their CDL and go to another company because they might hear that there's an opportunity to make more money some way, or like the truck's better, or whatever. Truck drivers do a lot of job hopping, and a lot of times by doing that, sometimes that's the way you can bump your paycheck up. And then you come back to the same old company. Sometimes you can make more when you go back because you get more experience somewhere else. So look at you and blah blah blah. And
right, you're building seniority with that company, so now you figured out that your paycheck's gonna be good.
Yeah, and so
but tell them also about basically being a truck driver. Like, basically tell them how what to expect, like as far as like who's your better teacher, the school or yourself in the truck. Basically my question is, explain to the audience what is a better experience, what is a better teaching moment than them graduating from school or them after school and experiencing what they have to go through the road.
Okay, you're gonna learn some stuff in school. They're not gonna teach you everything. Your driver trainer is gonna teach you as much as he or she can, hopefully. But generally, your real training begins once you're out on your own, and you've got to rely on yourself to figure stuff out as problems and things, as trials and tribulations come about, as you got to figure stuff out that you may not have been trained on, or maybe you cannot remember what you were told in school or by your driver trainer, and you've got to refigure it out, and you don't have anybody there to bail you out other than yourself. So there's all kinds of situations. There's things that they just they can't teach you everything. But I wish they would teach you more than what they do. I went through two driving schools and several companies, and I had to come down Richie to learn how to get taught how to chain, and I still got taught wrong. And and then I had to learn by asking the DOT, and my boss told me that the driver that taught me was telling me wrong, and if I kept doing it, because in Colorado, I don't know what the chaining laws are anywhere else in the country, because I've only chained up through Colorado, through Vail Pass and Eisenhower. Honestly, I haven't chained up anywhere else. I don't know what the chaining laws are in Donner Pass or anywhere else. I do know in Colorado that you have to have 4 drive tires with chains on is the law. Whether or not that is the same axle or all 4 outside tires, they require you, when the chain law goes up, that you have to have 4 drive tires chained. I have heard that the chain laws in like Donner's Pass, you have to pretty much have chains on almost all the tires or something. I really don't know, because I've been through Donner's Pass, but I never had to chain up in Donner's Pass, and I just never went through the chaining process anywhere else or whatever. So there's lots of things that you're gonna not get trained on, that you're gonna get taught, or maybe not get taught by the school, and you're going to get out and you're going to have to learn by watching other drivers and asking questions to other drivers. As you run into problems or things that you just don't know the answer to, you're going to do the best you can to get through it, and you're going to do what you have to get through it, and then you're going to learn from those experiences and figure out how that worked. You're going to learn better techniques of backing and better techniques of handling yourself at shippers and receivers by watching other drivers and seeing what they do and see how that works for them. When you show up to a shipper and receiver and you see that you're going to get sent to a certain dock, and you're playing the waiting game to get into a dock or whatever, and there's other drivers in front of you, watch those drivers to see if there's like stuff in the way, and to see what those drivers do and where they position themselves and how that worked for them, so that when you get up there to back into that same dock, you're ahead of the game and you know what to do, so you have less struggles than they did to get into the dock. Things like that. Watch other drivers, learn from other people's mistakes so that you make less of them yourself. But if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn as well as you do because if you struggle, if you make mistakes, you're going to learn much better than if you get it right. If you're constantly doing everything right, you're never truly going to really be sure that, you know, okay, this is working out for me. It seems like it worked out.
Right. Is it the right thing? Right, exactly.
And if it doesn't cause you any problems, if it doesn't cause you grief and issues and stress you out, it's just one of those things. So,
right. Yeah, what they say, the best teacher is your experience, right?
Your experience, your trials and tribulations is what your mistakes, your fuck ups, is what you learn from the most.
Yes, sir.
I just had a bunch of learning experiences at Randy's Diesel, and it cost me my job because of falling asleep at the wheel, not getting enough sleep, and frozen brakes, gel ups, and dragging tires because of frozen brakes, and costing the company money. And no driver is above making mistakes, no matter how many years of experience. I don't care how many years you've been driving. I don't care if it's your first day out from your trainer or you've been driving for 30 years. The longer you drive, though, the more you figure out how to get yourself out of the jams you get yourself in, and you are better at recognizing the situations you might be getting ready to get into and knowing how to avoid them. That just comes with experience. You just got to get out there and figuring out the country and how the roads work, which cities are a pain in the butt to get through at certain times of the day, knowing when to avoid, learning when you got to get into certain truck stops in the country because they're going to fill up because of parking spots. Learning that you got to get your butt into the truck stops early if you can, because they're going to fill up, and getting there early so you can get the ones that aren't paid parking. That's a real big thing. That stupid paid reserve parking that's going on, and some truck stops got almost their full lot paid parking, and it's expensive. So things like that.
Well, sir, that's the final question. If you got anything else for the audience to know, or any suggestions or anything you just want to point out for the final finish.
Make sure that when you get out there and you're gonna make sure you take the whole process seriously. Truck driving will pay off, but you got to get some time under your belt, and you got to get a few years under your belt before you can really be saying, yeah, I'm an experienced truck driver. You got to get anywhere from 4 to 6 years under your belt, and it all depends on your experiences, because depending on what driving jobs you do and it's your exposure, no two truck drivers have the same story. Some drivers have been driving for 4 years and have experienced more and have dealt with more than drivers that have been driving for 20 years and have been better trained and have been exposed to more things. So years of experience may or may not matter, but it does help. The more time you've been in, the more hopefully you've been exposed to, the more things you've had to deal with, the more things you've been taught through experience and trials and tribulations. So prime example, you can have, a guy might get into the trucking industry and he never switches jobs. He stays the same place. Stays at like a cushy driving job where nothing ever happens. He doesn't have any problems. He might only drive in the southern part of the country where the weather doesn't really go to crap that much, and doesn't have to deal with much, or something like that, where they just don't deal with as many problems. And then another driver might drive for only a few years, but they have had to deal with chaining in the mountains. They've had to deal with problems at shippers and receivers. They've had to deal with just dealing with a multitude of other things. So just because a driver has more years of experience doesn't necessarily mean that they know any more than the person with less experience. It all depends on what those drivers have been in individually. You take every driver at an individual basis, which is why I do these interview videos with drivers. And you know, I want to get more interviews with more drivers to get their experiences so they can tell their stories, their trials and tribulations, and who knows when one of them or several of them are going to be able to have a unique story that you guys can learn about on YouTube. So when you guys are out there, whether or not you're someone thinking about being a truck driver or in school or are already experienced, been doing it a while, maybe you can learn something. Maybe there's something that you might relate to. Even if I say it in a video, like you might relate more to Aaron than you do to me. He might say the exact same, the same wording and everything, say the same thing, but you'll relate to him and he'll say it. You know, it's kind of like your kids. They might sometimes their mom or their dad will say something, or their dad, you know, one of them will say something. The kids might listen more to one parent than the other. They might respect more parent than the other. And so it all depends on the relatability and the chemistry between people. And for some reason, you might relate to him more, you might relate to me more, you might relate more to someone else I interview more. For some reason, you just like them more for whatever reason. It doesn't mean that me or him, you know, you might like me more, you might like him more. And it's nothing personal, just you relate to them more. And somehow when someone else says it, it sinks in for some reason. You might hear it from 10 other people, but all of a sudden you come up to some random person that you barely met. For some reason it sinks in because that person said it, you know, whatever. But I know that was kind of long-winded, but hopefully
you get the drift. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully.
So that's all I gotta say. So
nice doing the interview with you, sir.
Yep, thanks for
this again.
Yep. So if you guys have any comments or questions for either one of us, put that in the comments below. Please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell below so you're notified of all the videos that I'm going to be posting. And there's several other videos that you can learn from. I'm constantly making more videos, and I don't even know what my count is on edited videos. I do have some lives, but I'm in the process of deleting a lot of those because I want to keep the count on live videos. So anyway, there's tons of stuff to learn from, and there's going to be more and more. You can learn all kinds of stuff. There's tons of videos to teach you all kinds of stuff. Anytime I have an opportunity to do a video, I will do so as they come up, and I have the opportunity to do so as drivers are willing to be filmed, because a lot of people just don't care for being in front of a video camera. But as I have the opportunity to do so, I will do any video I can about the trucking industry, so you guys can learn how to be better drivers and stuff like that. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.